Looking at our world from a theological perspective. This is the Theology Central Podcast, making theology central.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is Tuesday, July the 9th, 2024. It is currently 2:35 p.m. Central Time, and I am coming to you live from the Theology Central studio located right here in Abilene, Texas. Now, if I take all of my schooling that I have accomplished in the realm of theology and the realm of the Bible, if I take all of that, my associate degrees in religious education and biblical studies, and I don't know if I have one, I'd have to look at all my diplomas and all my degrees, bachelor's in theology, biblical studies, I think maybe also a bachelor's in religious education, master's in theology, biblical study, maybe one in religious education as well. If I take all of my degrees and diplomas and everything, all my schooling, all of my education in those areas, those specific areas of biblical studies, religious education, and theological studies, if I take all of them combined, do you know what the number one lesson I have learned from all of that? What do you think? The number one lesson you take all my diplomas, all my degrees. It doesn't matter if it was a Bible college, a Bible institute, or a seminary. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if it was a big school, small school, if it was kind of a church type school for like a Bible institute. It doesn't matter. The number one lesson I have gained from all of that education, that number one lesson would be, what do you think? Come on. What do you think it would be? All of my diplomas, all of my degrees. The number one lesson I can take from all of them, the number one lesson I can take from all of them is this. You have to be willing to acknowledge and admit to yourself and to others that you were wrong. You have to be able to admit it. You have to be able to acknowledge it. You have to be able to recognize it. You have to be able to see it. You have to be able to go, it doesn't matter how many degrees I have. It doesn't matter how many times I've studied this text. It doesn't matter how many times I've written papers on this. I have to be able to acknowledge and admit that I am wrong. Put it this way, if you don't reach that point, there's no point in pursuing more education. There's no point. Education is the process of you realizing how wrong you are. That's what education is. Education is the process of learning how much you don't know. Education is the process of realizing how wrong you have been. Education is the process of realizing how ignorant you really are. That's what education is all about. It's not to build your ego. It's not to make you feel more important. It's really to break you down and to demonstrate you thought you knew something, see how much you don't know. You thought you had the right answer, see how wrong you really were. That's really the goal. And I think it's even more important in theological education. I think in theological education, it's an absolute essential that you are constantly confronted with the fact that you have been wrong. You did not know the answer. A lot of times, it really happens a lot in seminary and Bible college. The people come out arrogant, full of themselves, conceited, thinking that they know everything, and they speak down to everyone else, and it drives me crazy. Something went wrong in your educational process. You should walk out going, whoa, you know what? I don't know very much. In fact, there's a lot I need to know. And I just spent 4 years, 8 years, depending on how many degrees and diplomas you were pursuing. You want to come out of it going, you know what I learned? How much I don't know. So I'm going to walk in humility, not in arrogance. That's how it should work. And if you think about it, that really parallels and it really is a good picture of the Christian life. Hey, whether you like to admit it or not, every time you open your Bible, you know what you're confronted with? How wrong you are, how sinful you are confronted with your sin, you're confronted with your failure, you're confronted with how wrong you are. Now, I know we have a tendency to go to the Bible thinking, wow, it's amazing. God always agrees with me, but it's not the case. You should be constantly confronted with, I used to think this. Maybe I was wrong. If you can't approach the Bible in a teachable spirit with humility, being able to acknowledge that you are wrong. That's why I constantly say your past understanding is of no present value. Whenever you open the Bible today, whatever you thought yesterday, you've got to be willing to change and admit that maybe you were wrong. It's never fun, but if you don't like admitting you were wrong, Christianity is not for you, because every day I open the Bible, I realize I'm a sinner. Oh, I'm a sinner. I'm a sinner. Oh, I may be able to clean up the outside really, 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 really good, right? I may be able to clean out the outside so that no one can make any accusation. No one can accuse me of anything. But does that really make me better? No, because inside I'm nothing but filthy, rotten flesh and bone. Okay, spiritually speaking, I'm full of decay and corruption inside. Oh, I may clean up the outside, but inside I'm still a mess. So on one hand, from a human perspective, yes, I cleaned up the outside. Everyone is happy. No accusations. No one hurt. Great. Inside, I'm a piece of total trash. I'm a dumpster fire. But I've got to be willing to admit that. Well, I say all of that, one, because I want you to gain a practical lesson from what you are about to hear. Because, ladies and gentlemen, I have turned on the microphone this afternoon to tell everyone, I know this is going to come as a shock, I was wrong about Psalm 83. I got it completely wrong, and I'm very frustrated with myself. Look, sometimes I am wrong because of the way I teach. I like it to be very organic and like we're working through it together almost in real time. So that's absolutely, that's a guarantee that I'm going to make mistakes. When I'm working through it in real time with you live on the air, or maybe sometimes I'm working through it in real time with the people at a church, or at the church in Victory in Tuscola and Ovalo. That's going to happen. I'm going to misspeak. I'm going to say, because I'm doing it in real time. I like doing it in real time because it allows everyone to be a part of the process. But it does make it sometimes a little, there's a chance I'm going to be wrong, but that's okay because we're working through it in real time. Sometimes I can be wrong, but it's kind of much more, it's not that I'm really wrong. It's more of I hate to say a ploy. It's kind of a part of the process. Sometimes I like to throw out an idea knowing I don't necessarily agree with the idea because I'm doing it to say, hey, what about this? Like throwing it out as a hypothesis, even though I know I'm going to be going in a different direction, to get everyone else to work on it and see if we can come to a different conclusion. Sometimes it's much more like, hey, could this be the right way when I know it's not the right way? In this particular case, I'm very frustrated because I thought I was right. Like, this is one that I had researched. I had notes copied down. In fact, I read directly from other sources. And I think now that I can say that I was wrong. And I think what happened is I found a source that confirmed what I was thinking. And instead of questioning the source or doing extra work, it fit my narrative that I went along with it. But lo and behold, I now have to admit that I was wrong. So are you ready? Okay, all of you remember in Psalm 83 how this all started, right? Where we're doing the Sermons 2.0 app sermon challenge. All of us are supposed to be listening to random sermons every single day, right? This week, you're supposed to be listening to random live webcast. Okay, well, you're listening to one now. So I guess you're accomplishing that. Okay, all right. So you're supposed to be listening to others than me. But okay, you get the idea. So on that particular week, we weren't doing live webcast. We were just doing random sermons. So I downloaded a bunch of sermons on my iPad because I was going to be doing a lot of driving around. And I had one that said the coming Middle East war. And I'm like, ooh, this could be good. Fits perfectly with my series on eschatology. The only problem is when I hit play, I saw the entire title, Psalm 83, the coming Middle East war. And then I was completely perplexed, confused, confounded, because I was like, what is Psalm 83 is not Well, this has nothing to do with the coming Middle East war. Where is this coming from? So I started listening to that series, and we reviewed messages from that series. And as we've reviewed messages from that series, I'm just going to be honest. At times, I've grown very frustrated with the series. I have grown very irritated with the series. I felt that there's things been said in the series that are just absolutely factually not true. Just absolutely in error. In fact, I've looked up some of those things in real time to fact check, and I'm like, this is just not accurate. Where is this coming from, right? So I've been very frustrated. Then we listened to a message where it connected Psalm 83 to 2 Chronicles 20, saying that Jehoshaphat called in Asaph. Well, that's impossible. Asaph was dead. So once again, just completely factually wrong. So I get frustrated, and I got really frustrated. But even though I've been frustrated, one of the things I try to do is, no matter how much I may disagree with a minister or a ministry, I always try my best to get as much out of their teaching as I can. And no matter how much I disagree, always be willing, just like that, to change my mind, to admit that I was wrong, to admit that my understanding has been incorrect. Just like that. Because it doesn't matter. I may disagree with them 900%. Doesn't mean that I'm always right. I've always got to be willing to change my mind. Well, that original series is now up to like part 26, 27, 28. It may be up to part 28 now. Let me look here. It's just they keep adding and adding and adding. I think I'm going to click here. I'm going to click if I can get it to work. It is currently at 28 parts. 28 parts. Now, the series at times is maddening because I don't even know what they're talking about. It doesn't have anything to do with Psalm 83. Well, early this morning, I don't know, 4 a.m., 5 a.m., my neighbor across the street, I don't know what they're working on. There's some project putting up a fence. I don't know. There was sawing and hammering and drills and then they started mowing the yard. It was like by 5:30 a.m. I was like, okay, I can't sleep. And I don't care. I'm not one of those to complain. I want my neighbors to make as much noise as they possibly can 24 hours a day. That's the way I am as a neighbor. Hey, have a party, blare your music, break things, shoot things, be as loud as you want, because then you can never complain about how loud I am, right? Okay, so that it's a good thing. So I don't care that they were loud, but it woke me up, and so I'm like, okay, great. Well, now that I'm awake, I got to make good use of this time, right? I got to make good use of this time. So what did I do? I grabbed my iPad and I looked for a live webcast. Obviously, there were none, and so I looked at my feed on the Sermons 2.0 app, and I'm like, wait, what? Psalm 83, part 28. You gotta be kidding me. I'm like, okay, so do I listen to that one? Well, I'm like, I'm a couple behind. Let me go back to part 25. So I went to part 25, and then he mentioned something, and immediately I thought, no, you're wrong. But see, now here's the thing. I got no problem saying, you're wrong. But what I've always tried to do, and I'm not saying I always do this right, but I've always tried, you're wrong, but I'm going to go now do a couple of hours of research to either prove that you are indeed wrong or to possibly correct myself. Because what is the number one lesson I've learned from all the Bible colleges, all the seminaries, all the degrees I have, religious education, theological studies, biblical studies, everything that I've done? The one lesson is that you've got to be willing to admit that you're wrong. You've got to. So I always have to check myself. So I was convinced that I was in the right. So I was going to go research to prove, oh, wait, this person is wrong, right? I'm just going to, there was almost a little bit of arrogance to it. See, I didn't quite learn my lesson from all of that schooling. I should have went, oh no, I could be wrong. Let me go check. But I kind of went to check to go, I'm going to show that this guy has made another absolute horrible mistake. And I come to find out that I'm the one who made the mistake. Are you ready to hear this? We're going to start from the beginning, and we're going to review this and see if you can find my mistake. Do you think you can find it? Do you think you can? Whoever can identify my mistake first, you win absolutely nothing And if you tell me that I was wrong, then I will never speak to you again. Okay, maybe that's not quite, I'm not quite showing the humility. No, but let's see if you can find out where I was wrong. Are you ready? Here we go.
Thy word is a lamp unto my feet and a light unto my path. This is Gary Neron welcoming you to the Lamp and Light broadcast, coming to you from the studios of Central Baptist Church in beautiful Ocala, Florida. Lamp and Light is a ministry, taking a book of the Bible verse by verse, teaching as it is to men as they are, without compromise or apology, speaking the truth in love, and our purpose is to give the lamp and light to all. Yesterday in our study of Psalm 83, we were talking about some of the weapons that the enemies of Israel have. Let's continue with that discussion today. Now, here is our teacher and pastor, Dr. Andy Bloom.
For the Bible stands.
Again, I just have to keep saying this. I'm always impressed with their intros. Their intros are so good. I love it. I love the everything about their intro is perfect. They got. I wish I had that. I wish my intro was that good. Okay, I don't know if I would go with the same kind of vibe, but I like their because I don't know if that vibe would fit me. That vibe really wouldn't fit me, but it fits what they're trying to do. Very well done. Love it. Love the production. Love it all. But wait. They're going to be talking about the weapons that the enemies of Israel has. Okay, wait, what is happening here with Psalm 83? Okay, this is where some of my frustration with this series has gotten, because so many times I'm like, I just don't understand what this has to do with Psalm 83. And I have been, because of this series though, I have worked so hard to try to give people something that I think can be applicable to what's going on in Psalm 83. That's what we've been doing hour after hour. So this series has definitely driven me to try to do something worthwhile with Psalm 83. But whenever I go back to how they're handling it, I'm just sometimes baffled. So, okay. So when you say the enemies are we going to look about their spiritual weapons? Are we going to get into some discussion about physical? Okay. Let's see what we can learn here.
Just for even associating with Christ, that name, even though they may not be doctrinally on the same place that we are, they're getting put to death. And that's, again, I'm going back to 2000. I'm telling you, I did this series back in 2010. A lot of research. I mean, hours upon hours of research to get here. Well, we find out that these people, Arab Spring, what did they do? They break their treaties. They break their promises. They've broken treaties and promises with Israel. And the numbers are staggering.
Now, this is where I was like, wait, the Arab Spring, how is, Psalm 83 has nothing to do with the Arab Spring. Like, where is this coming from? Like, say, this is what's so confusing to me. It's like, wait, Psalm 83, the Arab Spring? Wait, what? Wait, what? Now, back during the Arab Spring, many of you who listen today will not know this. I was broadcasting almost around the clock during the Arab Spring, talking about all of the situation and who was doing what and what was happening and what was going on. And that's basically when I'd fallen into it, basically doing a news podcast, even though that was never my intent. Well, it wasn't even called a podcasting at that time. I think I was just doing broadcasting on the Arab Spring, hour after hour. I mean, it was crazy. I never want to go back to the way that whole thing went down. So I know a little bit about it, but I never went like Psalm 83, the Arab. How is the Arab Spring Psalm 83? I just don't know. But let's see where he goes.
Against Israel, Hezbollah has a 10,000-man brigade with 40,000 missiles. Some of those missiles have long-range capacity.
What does Psalm 83 have to do with Hezbollah and their army and the number of missiles that they possess? See, this is where I just like, and so when I started listening, I'm just going to be fully transparent. I'm going to be fully transparent here, okay? at this point, I was just getting irritated. I'm like, why? What? And a part of me is like, why are you even listening? You disagree with their approach to the text. You've been frustrated. Now, what you're going to do is you're going to start fact checking all of this. And then you're going to be tempted to turn on the microphone to go, see, they got this wrong. They got this wrong. They got this wrong. And so immediately I was like, you're being kind of an arrogant jerk, right? How about you just shut up and listen and see if there's something you can learn. And even if you disagree with their approach, see what you can gain from it. But I'm telling you, at first I had a very negative attitude. And then I had to tell myself, I think I even stopped it a couple of times and said, I'm going to go listen to something else. But then I came back. I think I came back multiple times because I started getting frustrated, realizing I was having a bad attitude. And there's no justification for having a bad attitude, but I just was having a bad attitude and not being very godly. Okay. I know that's a shock, but I wasn't being very godly. Now, maybe again, nobody would have to know that. So I could turn on the microphone and go, I was listening this morning and I was just like, God, show me something important in this text. And I saw something I could make myself sound like I was all godly and spiritual, but I was an arrogant, condescending jerk thinking I was just going to look up all of this information to try to prove someone wrong. And then I basically stopped doing that. Just try to listen. Not because God spoke to me, just because I was having my own internal battle with my own depravity. So at this point, what you're listening to now, I was just getting irritated and frustrated with.
With the capability of carrying heavy payloads, along with chemical and biological warheads, which they seem to have. Syria, now again, I'm talking 2010, 2011, had a 500,000 man army with the latest equipment of the day that was supplied to them, how? By Russia. And if you'll look, the early war of Russia coming down against Israel of the tribulation, you'll see that Russia seems to be going through Syria on that trip.
Now, again, this morning, I just wanted to scream, what does this have to do with Psalm 83? It has nothing to do with Psalm 83. How are you going to connect this to Psalm 83? Psalm 83 is not about some future event. It's describing what was happening at the time. I've only, stated that 75,000 times, and I think I've been able to demonstrate that textually and everything. Hey, Psalm 83, they are describing what is happening at that time. All right. So at this point, I'm just being honest with you. I'm just getting more frustrated. Let's see if you can hear when I'm about to get confronted with how utterly foolish and wrong I was.
It is also said that Hamas has above 10,000 missiles, and it's believed that the Egyptian military, and again, it says it is believed, and this comes from military people and others, undercover and all that, but nothing that is printed as far as saying this is the actual legal proof. Now, they may have it, but some things that are documented are hidden.
Now, all of that's just bizarre. They may have it, they may not. There's nothing actually documented, but some things that are documented are hidden. So then where did you get your information from? And not only that, supposedly he's quoting from information from 2010. It's 2024. So, the whole thing is just bizarre to me. So I got this information, but it's hidden. But where did you get the information? Do you have a military source? Do you have military intelligence that are faxing you? I'm going to just use outdated technology. Did they fax you? Military intelligence going, here's the weapon capability and the military capability of Hamas, of Hezbollah, of Egypt, of Russia. What? So, you're a church that's receiving military intelligence. Look, where did you get the information? He doesn't cite a source. Now, again, when I was listening this morning, this is the way I was talking. I was getting irritated and I was getting frustrated. Okay. And guess what I wanted to do? I wanted desperately to grab, my iPad and just start researching. Boom, 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 boom. Is that true? Is that true? Is that true? And then I wanted to turn on then at least I thought about, then I'll just do a broadcast going, once again, we're in Psalm 83, but this has nothing to do with Psalm 83. And this is wrong, and this is wrong, and this is wrong, and this is wrong, and this is wrong. But then I thought, you know what? I'm tired of doing that. I'm not going to do that in any way, shape, or form. But I was like, okay, this will be over in a couple of minutes. And then I can just say I listened to it, and because I'm going to listen to every one of these just because I stated I was going to. I have to fulfill that obligation. Maybe it's one thing I can do right. Maybe, I'll at least do that. Well, at some point, though, something is going to be said that proves I'm an idiot. All right. Are you ready? Here we go. Let's see if you find it. Let's see if you can detect it first.
And we have that in our own government. I mean, there's things on FBI files that we don't know about. There may be things about yourself, about me, on FBI files that I don't know what they say, but they're there. But the Egyptian military has more than all of these others I've just mentioned, and with a nuclear capability of which they're afraid that in the wrong hands would be a big problem. And with this Arab Spring, it could be a big problem.
I'm just so confused. With this Arab Spring, it could be a big problem. The Arab Spring is over. Okay, what are we talking? I don't even understand. What do you mean it could be? You mean it possibly was a big, why are we even talking about the Arab Spring? What does that have to do with Psalm 83? And what is that going to do with 2024? Okay, now so you can hear my frustration. Okay, so this is the way I was. See, I wasn't being godly. I was not being humble. See, I had not learned that lesson that I learned from all of my years in Bible colleges is, hey, always be willing to admit that you're wrong. Stay teachable. Stay humble.
It didn't become that, but it could have.
Okay. Well, he said, okay, good thing he did admit it didn't become that, but it could have. Okay. So it didn't become that. Okay. Great. Thank you for admitting it did not become that. None of this happened. None of the speculation happened. All right. So what has this got to do with Psalm 83?
During the Arab Spring thing. But your government, our government, released to Egypt, even though they were trying to help the Arab Spring in Egypt, they released to them $200 million just before Mubarak fell. We dedicated it to Egypt, and I say I'm talking about America, for military use.
Okay, what has that got to do with Psalm 83? America released $200 million, I'm assuming dollars, to Egypt for military use prior to the Arab Spring. Okay, I don't understand. Was that based off in a prior agreement? I don't understand he's saying it in such a sinister way. Are you saying America caused the Arab Spring? What has that got to do with Psalm 83? But you see what my temptation is here, right? To look up all of this, up and go, no, well, this is not accurate. This is not accurate. And not only that, what is the source in which you're quoting all this information from? You've got the source from somewhere. What is the source? Right? So like that. But, and again, what does this have to do with Psalm 83? But, wait, have you detected the part where I was wrong yet? You haven't? Okay, well, keep listening. See if you hear it.
Now, let's look at those 4 verses with that background because I want you to see these things. And we have hit these things. We've tried to hit it as clearly as we can. Again, this goes back over 10 years ago. I mean, this is 2024. I did this in 2010, presented it in our church. You could actually go to our website, centralbaptistocala.org, And when you scroll down on that page and you look for sermons by Bible, you click onto the Bible, go down to the book of Psalms, and click down to get Psalms 83. You'll see all the sermons. You can hear all the sermons I preached on Psalms 83.
So it looks like he's utilizing information from his sermon series in 2010 and then referencing some of that material. Now, you already know my feelings about that. You should never use past you should never use past notes in a present teaching, ever, under any circumstances, ever, 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 ever. Because if your past information was wrong, then that becomes present wrong. Don't ever do that. You always start over, brand new, afresh. But some ways I want to go back and listen to everything he said in 2010, just because because then I could connect it with the Arab Spring. Since he's making it about the Arab Spring, I wonder how much he connected Psalm 83 to the Arab Spring in 2010. And if he did, well, did he get all of that? Was he gonna? I would be interesting to know if he said it in 2010. Hey, the Arab Spring is Psalm 83 coming to being fulfilled. I don't know what he did. I don't understand any of this. Okay, but what did he say where I immediately realized that I'm the idiot? Let's see here.
And get it before this radio series is over. You can listen to it. But these first 4 verses here, he says, keep not thou silence. Don't be mute.
Now, this was baffling to me. He's in part 28. And we're going back to verse 1, or he's part 25. Part 25, going back to verse 1. The whole structure of this is just baffling beyond all comprehension to me. I just don't get the structure. But okay. So we're back in verse 1. All right. Now, at this point, I got a little excited, right? So now my attitude started changing. Right? Forget all of that. Let's not get into that. He's in the text. All right. Now I'm ready. Let me see if I can get something from this. Have you heard where I was wrong yet? Have you? Okay, let's keep listening.
About this is what he's saying. So he says, keep not silence, O God. Hold not thy peace. Don't be deaf at what we're saying, and be not still. Don't refrain from helping. O God. Why does he say, O God, twice here? Because he's approaching the Almighty God, not the false gods of those nations that's surrounding them right now. And this is a call for God to judge the enemies of Israel. Now, the theologians called this imprecatory psalm. An imprecatory psalm is a one of a prayer to God to invoke God's wrath on the wicked.
At that very moment, I reached over, hit pause, and he called it an imprecatory psalm. No. This is not an imprecatory psalm. This is a communal lament. This is a lament psalm. So immediately I was like, okay, is this one of those situations no one can agree if it's an imprecatory or a lament? If we can't even agree if it's an imprecatory or a lament, well then once again, this demonstrates the impossibility of ever interpreting the Bible. Okay. So I'm like, all right, well, let me look this up. So I started looking up and all of a sudden I was like, I'm an idiot. And literally I wanted to just delete my podcast. I'm like, I give up, because even though I did extensive research, in fact, I'm going to read some of the research I did before, it appears that the majority call this an imprecatory psalm, and I did not. Now, what makes me mad, if you go back and listen, I don't know which, maybe part 1, part 2 that I did at Victory Baptist Church, you can hear someone in the church, I believe I believe her name is Sarah. Sarah, I won't give the last name. I believe she is the one who I think when I asked what type of psalm it is, classified it as an imprecatory psalm. And you hear me say, no. It has elements of an imprecatory psalm, but this is a lament psalm. So someone gave me the right answer and I said no, which only intensifies how stupid I feel today. I cannot believe I got this wrong. As soon as he said, I was going to look it up to prove him wrong. Now, the good thing is, I was following my advice. You always have to be willing. No matter what you hear, you don't just immediately say someone is wrong. You got to go do your own. Before you can say someone is wrong, you've got to go do the work to prove you can't say someone is wrong until you prove they are wrong. If you haven't proved they're wrong, you have no business saying they're wrong. I think that's a very good principle to operate from. But I was convinced. I'll look this up. And immediately I started looking up going, what did I do? Why did I call this a communal lament? Now, if you'll remember, I'm going to go through some of my notes here. Really quick. All right. The book of Psalms contains a variety of psalms that can be categorized into different types based on their themes, structure, and purpose. All right. We have the praise psalms, or sometimes referred to as hymns. These psalms focus on praising and glorifying God for his attributes, deeds, and character. They often include expressions of adoration, thanksgiving, and exaltation. Examples of these would be Psalm 8, Psalm 100, and Psalm 150. These are praise psalms or hymns. The second kind, I'm going to skip the second kind. We'll call the next one the second kind, even though it's not in my notes. Thanksgiving psalms. These psalms give thanks to God for his goodness, faithfulness, and provision. They often including recounting of past experiences of deliverance or answered prayers. This is Psalm 30, Psalm 100, and Psalm 116. We have what we call wisdom psalms. These psalms focus on imparting wisdom and moral teachings through poetry and metaphor. They often contrast the righteous and the wicked and emphasize the value of seeking God's guidance. This would be Psalm 1, Psalm 37, Psalm 119. All right, we'll have royal psalms. These psalms celebrate or pray for the king or ruler of Israel and emphasizes the divine authority given to the monarch. They often express confidence in God's protection and blessings upon the king. Examples of these would be Psalm 2, Psalm 20, and Psalm 72. We have penitential psalms. These psalms focus on confession of sin, repentance, and seeking forgiveness from God. They express deep remorse and a desire for restoration of relationship with God. Psalm 51, Psalm 32, and Psalm 130. Okay, so I went through all of those, all right? Sounds really good, sounds academic. Everyone understands the different types of psalms. Great. Well, I had two categories left. One is what I refer to as, or what is referred to as, not just me, lament psalms. These psalms express sorrow, grief, distress, and a cry out to God for help. They often include elements such as petition, complaint, pleas for God's intervention. Some examples of these would be Psalm 13, Psalm 22, Psalm 88, and I told everyone Psalm 83. And not only did I call it a lament, I called it a communal lament because other resources said that. In fact, one source, and I don't know which commentary or dictionary I received this from, but Psalm 83 is often classified as a communal lament psalm. Communal lament psalms are prayers offered by a community of people such as the nation of Israel rather than just an individual. These psalms typically express a collective cry for help, deliverance, or justice on behalf of the entire community. And Psalm 83, the psalmist calls on God to act against the enemies of Israel who are threatening the nation. The psalm describes the various nations conspiring against Israel and asks God to intervene on behalf of the people. The intensity of the plea of God's protection and justice aligns with the characteristics of a communal or a lament psalm, especially one that reflects a communal concern. So I was like, this is a lament psalm. This is a lament. I was convinced it was a lament psalm, right? In fact, there's a part of me that still wants to make an argument that it is a lament psalm but the reason why is because of verse 1. And this really began to fit. And see, what happened is the research was it was confirming my own bias. See, my own bias is, what do I do with Psalm 83? Everybody wants to make this about a war or this or that, about something in the future or going to 2 Chronicles. That doesn't seem to work. But I knew what I could do with it. Do not keep silent, O God. Do not hold your peace, and do not be still, O God. Now, immediately when I read that, I'm like, okay, and even in the New King James, there's exclamation points there after, oh God. This is showing the intensity of the emotion of the plea. They are worried. They are concerned. They are filled with distress. They are bothered. And Asaph is now taking the concerns of the people and crying out to God in a communal lament. And they're like, God, where are you? What are you doing? Oh, here's what's going on. And then they lay out exactly why they're filled with concern and why they are wondering where God is. And even though they believe in a God in whom they cannot see, they're living in circumstances which they can see. And those circumstances are making them question where God is or his involvement or even his existence. And so it all fit perfectly. Now, yes, I understand that he describes the enemies. He lists the enemies. He asked them to deal with the enemies in the present as he had dealt with enemies in the past. And then I understand verse 13 and following have a different characteristic there. 13 and following, I agree, does not have a lament as much as it has an imprecatory nature. So I felt this was a lament psalm with an imprecatory section, right? Or at least elements of an imprecatory psalm. An imprecatory psalm, if you do not know, is this. These psalms contains prayer for God's judgment and punishment upon the enemies of the psalmist or of God. They express strong emotion of anger, frustration, and a desire for justice. Well, I felt that the lament part was found in verse 1. That's truly a lament to me. That's not so much, hey, God, destroy them. That's more like, God, where are you? This is not like, hey, God, kill them. This is more like, God, could you bother to show up? Now, yes, starting at verse 13, there's very much an imprecatory section. Oh my God, make them like the whirling dust, like the chaff before the wind. But I feel that the lament, the communal lament, captures the overall essence. But when he said imprecatory, I was like, no. And I started looking it up, and immediately, what did I find? I found sources that went along with it. In fact, I started looking up AI, artificial intelligence, and the chatbot said this. Psalm 83 is generally classified as an imprecatory psalm rather than a lament psalm. Imprecatory psalms are those in which the psalmist calls upon God to bring judgment or curses upon their enemies. These psalms are often express feelings of anger, frustration, a desire for justice against those who have wronged the psalmist or the people of Israel. In Psalm 83, psalmist pleads with God to act against the enemies of Israel. Lament psalms, on the other hand, are characterized by expression of sorrow, mourning, or a sense of being overwhelmed by suffering or injustice. The psalms often include petitions for help, expressions of trust in God, and declarations of faith in the midst of difficult circumstances. So now see, when I read that paragraph, I'm like, Psalm 83 is a lament. Okay. So there's a part of me that wants to fight this, but I'm like, oh, so I even got into an argument with AI. So I was like, AI, I have asked you now a couple of times, and I know one time you said it's a lament, and one time you said it's imprecatory. So could you clarify? AI said this, I apologize for the confusion. Psalm 83 is often classified as an imprecatory psalm rather than a communal lament. Imprecatory psalms, and it goes on. It says, while Psalm 83 does contain elements of calling upon God to act against enemies, it focuses more on invoking divine judgment and deliverance. So it says, rather than expressing a communal cry for help or deliverance. I disagree. Look, there's a part of me that wants to fight this. I feel like it's a communal lament, and it fits better. The imprecatory part is at the end, and even the imprecatory part is, I don't feel like it carries typically imprecatory is like, destroy them, kill them. And there is a little bit of this, like, basically make them like whirling dust, like the chaff as the fire burns. I understand it's got that language, but immediately look what it does. That they may seek your name, O Lord. Well, if you're saying, hey, do all of this that they may seek you, that doesn't sound like you're saying kill them. If you're saying, hey, do all of these things so they will seek you. Nobody is seeking you if they're dead. And then look at the next part. Let them be confounded and dismayed forever. Let them be put to shame. And it says, and perish, but that they may know that you, whose name alone is the Lord. I think it's using very poetic, strong language, but clearly what the psalmist really wants is for them to come to know who the true God is, for them to be filled with shame. Like it sounds like to me that there's it takes the imprecatory nature and almost it pushes it back from being truly imprecatory in my estimation. To me, imprecatory is like destroy them. They deserve to be destroyed. It's really an expression almost of frustration and anger. Where here, it's more of, Lord, please help us. Please, where are you? We need you here. And I feel that it's a communal lament because it's all of Israel. And then it goes on. Hey, Lord, this is the enemy. Here's their name. Can you do now what you've done then? And then there's a little bit of the expression of the anger. But I think lament can express that as well. Now, the question is, does it have a major impact on how we interpret the psalm? If we call it an imprecatory versus calling it a lament, does it change how you interpret the psalm? If we classify it as a lament, how should we interpret it? And if we classify it as imprecatory, how should we interpret it? Now, I don't know. I'm going to do this in real time. I'm going to ask AI. Okay, how would we interpret, I'm going to do this in real time, interpret Psalm 83 if we classify it as a lament psalm, and how would we interpret it if we classify it as an imprecatory? If I can spell right, imprecatory. There we go, imprecatory psalm. Thank you for AI for telling me I was misspelling it. Question mark. Enter. Let's see what it says. Are you ready? What do you think? Is it going to impact our interpretation? Okay, here we go. Are you ready? When interpreting Psalm 83 as a lament psalm, we would view it as a communal cry for help and a deliverance on behalf of the entire nation of Israel. The psalmist, representing the community, expresses a sense of urgency and desperation in seeking God's intervention against their enemies. The language used in the psalm would be seen as a plea for God's protection, favor, in the face of external threats. On the other hand, if we interpret Psalm 83 as an imprecatory psalm, we would understand it as a prayer calling upon God to bring judgment and curses upon the enemies of Israel. The psalmist invokes divine wrath and punishment against those who seek to harm or destroy the people of God. In this interpretation, the psalm serves as a plea for God's righteous vengeance and vindication. Regardless of the classification, whether as a lament or as an imprecatory psalm, Psalm 83 ultimately reflects the deep faith and trust of the psalmist and the community and God's power to protect, defend, deliver them in times of trouble and adversity. Now, if you hear that first part, when we interpret it as a lament psalm, we would view it as a communal cry for help and a deliverance on behalf of the entire nation of Israel. The psalmist representing the community expresses a sense of urgency, desperation, seeking God's intervention against their enemies. The language used in the psalm would be seen as a plea for God's protection, favor, and the face of external threats. That is how I've been describing it. So clearly, I have followed that interpretation because I have seen it as a lament psalm. If I see it as an imprecatory psalm, even AI at least thinks I should probably then approach it somewhat different. If I approach it as an imprecatory psalm, then I would understand it as a prayer calling upon God to bring judgment and curse upon the enemies of Israel. It would be more about they want these people destroyed. They're expressing their anger, their need for divine wrath and punishment, and they want those who seek harm to be destroyed. And this interpretation of the psalm serves as a plea for God's righteous vengeance and vindication. And I don't know if they want vengeance and vindication as much as it seems like they want the people to come to understand who the true God is. So I think that there's a part of me that wants to argue. I looked up number of sources, and almost all the sources that I looked up today all said imprecatory. You're wrong. I used multiple AI sources. I used the Microsoft Copilot browser, and it gave me all of these sources, all said imprecatory. And I went with lament. Now, I think I can defend my lament hypotheses, but I think I may be prone to defend my lament hypotheses on the basis of the narrative I was creating to it. So am I so committed to that narrative that I cannot admit that I'm wrong? Look, I'm going to admit that at least it appears from most sources I was 100% wrong. Now I feel bad that maybe I have been wrong in my entire interpretation of the psalm. Now, you know what I love to do. I'm going to place it in your hands. And now I'm frustrated that he didn't even bother to classify this psalm. It sounds like part 26. Why wasn't he doing this in part 1? I don't know. The whole thing is confusing, but it's still on me. It's still on me. Do you think that I'm wrong and that this is an imprecatory psalm? Or do you think it's justifiable based off the text to classify it as a lament? And do you think it changes anything? AI believes it changes it. It changes your approach to the text. If we approach it in Psalm 83 as an imprecatory psalm, then the way the person we're listening to, then he's right. This is about them wanting these enemies destroyed. And I see it more as they're crying out to God and they're confused that God hasn't done anything, and they're doing everything in their power to convince God, we need you to do something because the situation is bad. And when you do something, we want it to be done so that they may seek you, so that they may know you. That to me is radically different than an imprecatory psalm. That's my argument. But I feel, well, I'm saying it. I was wrong. It looks like this should be classified as an imprecatory psalm. Now, if you do research today and you can find a good if you can find a 50-50 break where 50% say lament, 50% say imprecatory, well, great. I'll feel somewhat vindicated, but at the same time, I'm going to be very disturbed because, ladies and gentlemen, if we cannot even identify the type of psalm, that makes hermeneutics the most subjective thing on the face of the earth. Now, maybe that's a little hyperbole, but it does bother me greatly. So what do you think? Imprecatory or lament? Let's finish reviewing the audio here and see what he has to say.
And an imprecatory prayer is vindication for the purpose and will of God. Not necessarily a fleshly revenge, no, but to honor God. The land belongs to Israel, and this is a call to God to defend it, as it was God's gift and God's desire for Israel to have it. Now, you read the Bible and you can't see that, then again, if you went to a Christian college, sue the Christian college. It's clear. Now, I'm saying this to say this. Now, here they are. They're praying. God do something. I believe that God does lead us in prayer sometimes. Imprecatory praying. Somebody's trying to destroy the standards of your church. Somebody's trying to run down what the church is doing that's right.
Ooh, that makes me a little nervous. Hey, someone's trying to destroy the standards of your church. You do go full-blown imprecatory and ask them to be destroyed? Oh, man. That's a little frightening. And then you would ask, how does an imprecatory psalm fit with love your enemy, turn the other cheek, resist not those who do evil? Is an imprecatory psalm more of a national psalm under a theocratic monarchy? Or is an imprecatory psalm for us to use because someone is attacking the standards of our church? Hey, you, look, we've got standards in this church about music, and you're coming in here and you're talking about music. I pray God that they be killed. I think that's a little, I don't know. That seems a little extreme to me. It's a little, you want divine justice and vengeance upon people? Whoa. That makes me a little nervous.
Biblical, and that's good. They make false accusations. Listen, I'm a pastor. I have lived with all kinds of false accusations. They come in. I think one of the most unfortunate things is not so much the false accusation, but I've had stand at the bedside of people of their last days, even close to their last breath, apologizing for their critical spirits, for their lies, for the things. I've seen people that have done that, and suddenly they're taken out of this world.
Whoa, so you saying people died because they were critical of you and your ministry? Whew, man, alive. And should we pray an imprecatory psalm because someone is critical of our ministry? I can promise you this, for all those who are critical of me, and you could accuse me, make accusations, may even be able to prove your accusations, or are critical of me, I'm never going to pray for anyone's demise or death. I mean, I get emails that threaten me, but I'm not going to pray for anyone's death or destruction or an imprecatory psalm. What I think I'm supposed to do is love my enemy. If I have done wrong, hopefully I would admit that I have done wrong. Hopefully. I mean, I'm an ungodly person, so, maybe I wouldn't. I don't know. But that seems crazy to me. Like, if we're going to apply the imprecatory, that God will sometimes lead us into an imprecatory psalm. Well, there's God leading outside of the Bible. Again, do you think imprecatory psalms belong under the kind of the concept of a theocratic monarchy, where God is kind of governing, controlling Israel, and Israel can pray for the destruction of their enemies, because God specifically promised in many cases to destroy their enemies in certain situations? I mean, man, that makes me a little nervous. I don't know.
They've died. And it just seemed like God was showing me there's a person that could have brought damage, not just to you, but to the church, to so much. And God took them on out. I believe that.
That person could have done damage to you and to your church, and God took them out. Ladies and gentlemen, if God's going to step in and start killing people who's a threat to your church, then by all means, stop the nonsense of having guns and security teams. If God's going to take people out who are critical of your church and ministry, if God's going to start killing people like that, then please stop locking your front door and stop worrying about guns. Stop being so pro-gun. You've got God who kills people on your behalf.
And there is no joy for me if God takes a person out. When people have apologized to me, I was thankful. They apologized on their deathbed. And I didn't even confront them about what they've done. God evidently had confronted them. I was thankful. I could say, oh, listen, that's past, we're going to see in heaven.
You think maybe what you would do would be like, God, if you're killing this person for me, could maybe you stop? Maybe you heal them? Maybe, I don't know, Lord. Hey, I don't want them to die. Instead of being thankful they're apologizing, maybe you're like, God, no. Don't kill them. Don't. If you're perceiving that God is killing them because they were critical of you, the whole thing here gets a little nervous.
And we're going to rejoice together in the glory and salvation of God. But you know, those are things that are to come. But yes, we need to pray for the defeat of that which seeks to corrupt the local church. I think churches and Christians should have been having prayer meetings about the contemporary movement and its filth and its movement to the churches.
No way. Okay. Now, if you're just asking for something that is going against Christianity to be defeated, okay, then that's not, I don't feel that's an imprecatory psalm. Imprecatory is asking for destruction, for defeat. In fact, if I go back, I'm going to go back to my notes because I'm going to look here at some imprecatory psalms. Okay, see here. Is this a precatory psalm? Let's see here. Is this classified as an imprecatory psalm? I don't know if this is an imprecatory psalm. Hang on, let me look here. There's a lot of parts here that I don't know if they would be. Okay, yeah, here's a little bit of an imprecatory part. This is part of Psalm 69. Let their table become a snare before them and their well-being a trap. Let their eyes be darkened so that they do not see. Make their loins shake continually. Pour out your indignation upon them. Let your wrathful anger take hold of them. Let their dwelling place be desolate. Let no one live in their tents, for they persecute the ones you have struck, and talk of the grief of those you have wounded, and iniquity to their iniquity. Let them not come into your righteousness. Let them be blotted out of the book of the living. Okay, now, if you're talking about an imprecatory psalm, that seems, imprecatory psalm basically is, I want them dead. Now, so the contemporary movement comes into the church and you want to, if you just want it to be defeated, but you're utilizing the imprecatory psalm as an example, are you just saying the imprecatory psalm teaches us to pray against our enemies, simply seeking their defeat, and that's it? Then okay, I'm in agreement. If you're saying for them to die because you don't agree with the way they do church, see, the imprecatory has a very specific connotation to me. All right. Now you can probably look online, a list of imprecatory psalms, read all the imprecatory psalms and see what you find. But let's finish this up.
It's replacement of the Word of God with psychology and philosophy instead of just as it is to men as they are Bible preaching. And so, if you walk with God, you read God's Word, it's through His Word, God will show you the things that you should pray for and the things you should pray against. Now, notice again with me.
Now, see, I'm in complete agreement. The Bible would tell you what to pray for and what to pray against. Now, I'm all for that. I just don't know when you say imprecatory. His whole point was trying to use the imprecatory as something we should do. Imprecatory is more than just praying against. You're praying for the total annihilation and destruction of people to die. Okay, I think that falls under a theocratic monarchy. Personally.
Right here in verse 2, it says, For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. Now, there are people that hate anything that has to do with God. Our first Congress decreed that Bibles should be put in every school. Then we had a Supreme Court who decided to vote against God and against your first U.S. Congress and basically your Constitution to say, let's take the Bible out of the schools. And aren't the schools so much more safe today since you removed God and prayer and the Bible out of that?
Oh, in the name of bubblegum, nobody took the Bible and prayer out of school. Any kid can bring their Bible to school and read it at the appropriate time. Study hall, free time, lunch. They can pray 24. The kids can pray whenever they want. What you want is a mandatory Bible being put there by the school. And you say it goes against the Constitution. The Constitution has a separation, the idea of some kind of a separation. We do not want a state mandated church. We don't want that. Okay, it's a public school. If you want a Christian school, open one. If you want the public school, it has to be public, meaning open for all those who are Christian and who aren't Christian. Right? And if you're going to demand the Bible, well, then why can't someone demand the Satanic Bible or the Quran? The whole thing is ridiculous. You can any teenager can carry their Bible to school. They can't just read it in the middle of math class. But they can read it whenever they have free time. And if they want to pray, they can pray whenever. They can be praying with their eyes wide open, looking at everyone. They can pray for they could stop by your church. You could have the doors open at 7:30 in the morning. They could stop by on the way to school to pray. They can pray whenever they want. But you want someone making them, leading them in it. Drives me so crazy. Like churches will be closed for anything. Their youth group is an absolute joke. It's fun, food, and activity. Well, hey, have Bible classes for the teenagers Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, in the morning, in the afternoon, and after school. Have prayer time for the teenagers Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Oh, no, we don't want the church to do it. You want the school to do it. That's a joke. Okay. And I don't know what any of this has to do with Psalm 83, but okay.
I grew up in school and don't ever remember a shooting in school. I don't remember teachers trying to lead us against our parents. And against our country. But verse 2 says, For lo, thine enemies make a tumult, and they that hate thee have lifted up the head. Now the tumult is a loud uproar. In other words, they're going to make it known. Oh, this is bad. These people are praying in the church. These people are praying in schools. These people are actually talking about Jesus in a good way. I actually had one of our teachers in our Sunday school who was working with some of the Spanish kids, was talking to them about having a witness at school. And one of the students said, we're only allowed to use the name Jesus as a cuss word. We cannot say it as something good. Now, was that so? I don't know. The student was in a public school, and they just said,
hey, I don't know if this is true, but a teenager said it. So I don't know if it's true, but I'm going to say that in a certain public school, hey, give me the name of the public school. I would love to call the public school and say, according to this preacher, hey, kids can only say Jesus if they use it as a cuss word. They can't say Jesus in a positive way. Is this a school policy? Can you explain when this occurred? Can you explain? I would love to, but we don't have the name of the school, so we can't verify. And he hasn't verified it. He doesn't even know if it's true. He just knows some teenagers said it. Man, whew. I don't know if we want to use teenagers as a source of truth, but okay. I mean, you go right ahead. I question myself much. I question myself enough. I don't know if I want to add teenagers to my list of resources that I'm going to trust.
I'm allowed to use the name of Jesus in a good way. And I guess the other students that were with him agreed. So, you see here, they hate thee. They lifted up the head. Now, the tumults, the loud uproar, they want to turn others against them. And so they start speaking to others to turn nations against them. And the rest of verse 2 says, they that hate thee, that is, they that hate God, they that hate thee, that hate God, Jehovah, have lifted up the heads.
This is your radio pastor, Pastor.
There we go. I wanted to play the rest only because I didn't want to be accused of taking anything out of context. The purpose of all of that was, even though, and I do want to use this as a learning example here, I disagree with a lot of that, as you can hear. I've got some issues. But even though I disagreed, I was confronted today by listening to that with my classification of Psalm 83 as being a communal lament, and he made it clear that it's an imprecatory psalm. Now, I went through all the different types of psalms. I've tried to argue a little bit for the reason why I went with a lament psalm. I've tried to read to you from different sources. I've told you in real time, we consulted AI, and AI makes an argument that if you go with a lament psalm, you will interpret it one way. If you go with it as an imprecatory psalm, you will interpret it another way. Clearly, I've interpreted it more and along as a lament, and now I've laid it all out. I've admitted that I'm wrong because so far the majority of sources seem to say it's an imprecatory. I'm confused by that, but as of right now, I'm going to say I was wrong, and we will see. And now I hand it to you. This is what I love doing on this podcast, is we work on these issues together. So do your research. Is Psalm 83 a communal lament, or is it imprecatory? If it's a communal lament, how would you interpret it? If it's an imprecatory, how would you interpret it? And if it's an imprecatory that has all of my teaching on Psalm 83 up to this point been absolutely in error? If so, then I will acknowledge that and correct it to the best of my ability. Personally, I would have a hard time. I'm just being honest with you. And maybe because I'm so far into this now that it's hard to back up, I would have a hard time at this point going back over Psalm 83 and doing it more like an imprecatory. Because even when they ask for judgment, it doesn't feel to reach the imprecatory level. It seems like as soon as it starts getting close to that imprecatory level, they seem to pull back and like, hey, we just want them to, we want them to seek you. We want them to know you. All right, well, people can't seek you and know you if they're dead. So that's why I went more with a lament idea. And I believe it starts with clearly a lament. God, where are you? And then outlines why they're so concerned and why they need God's intervention. So I feel like it has much more of a lament feel than an imprecatory feel. But obviously, most people disagree with me, and I got no problem acknowledging that I am wrong. So I'm going to say I'm wrong for now. I could change my mind and go back. You know what? In fact, my original intent was just say, look, I was wrong. But I want you to learn, even in a message, even in sermons where you may disagree, don't ever allow yourself just to stop listening. Always keep listening and gain what you can, and always be willing to admit that you were wrong, and always be willing to change your view when you hear and as you're learning. We have to remain humble and teachable, and we got to be able to admit that we're wrong. I feel like I blew it here. I don't know why. I don't know why I never questioned my lament hypotheses. I don't know why, but I think I was wrong. I think maybe this is an imprecatory psalm, and I think maybe the tone of it should be different than the way I've presented it. I'm willing to work on that, but I hand it to you. So your job is to see what you can find, and then email me, newsif@yahoo.com. That's newsif@yahoo.com. Now, the funny part is, I said when right before I got ready to do this broadcast, I'm like, this will be about 30 minutes. And then I could get to the other things I need to do that are much longer today. There's some other things we need to talk about that are this went 74 minutes. So yeah, I was wrong about that as well, right? A day of being wrong. All right. Well, there we go. Hopefully, the one thing it does, it adds more discussion about Psalm 83. But by the time, look, we went into summer 2023 thinking we're going to be focusing Proverbs. And inevitably, this has turned into the summer of Psalm 83. You'll always remember the summer of 2024, not the summer of 69. Yeah, get it? Okay. Music fans know what I'm talking about. All right. Not the summer of 69. But the summer of 2024 became the summer of Psalm 83. I don't know if it's going to be of any spiritual benefit to any of us, but we definitely have done the work on it. Thanks for listening. Everyone have a great day. God bless.